Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the BeBall Jones podcast. Of course, I'm your lovely host, BeBall Jones, and today I have a great interview coming for you guys. We're going back to the NBA level with you guys. I've gone high school, gone, NBA level before. We're going to go back there. I even went overseas and got you some professional players over there. But we're going back to the pro game, the NBA level. And I'm bringing you guys a special angle from the side. You see the players all the time, you see the coaches, but I'm bringing you a trainer, but it's from a different angle. It's a little bit different angle for you guys. But it's a special one because he's with the organization that I personally have near and dear to my heart because one of my favorite players play on that team. But we don't get too deep into that one. But yeah, no, I'm gonna shut up and let the pros get to talking, man. But welcome into the show, Cruz. What's going on, man?
What's going on? What's going on? B-Ball, thanks for having me, man. I'm a little fan of yours, man. This has been great. It's been awesome to watch your platform, and I'm excited to be here. So thank you for the opportunity.
I'm glad to have you on, man. Anytime somebody agrees to come on here, it means a lot to me. So I feel honored to have you on here.
Well, hey, thank you, man. Appreciate that.
So you with the Trailblazers, man. But what is your actual title? What do you actually do for the team?
Absolutely. Yeah. So my title is performance physical therapist and sports scientist. So it's a hybrid role. It's a lot to take in. There's a lot to get done, but it's actually really cool. It's primarily a medical role, and so I work with our athletic trainers, and I work with our strength coaches. But something that I'd say the typical fan may or may not know is the sports science side of it. So there are, everyone is hearing a lot about load management these days, and we can talk about that if you want. We talk about whatever you want, but yeah, there is a component in terms of blending the medical side of things, blending the performance side, and then blending all of the basketball load metrics that we get specifically, that these guys put on their body, the loads that they put on their body. And so that is an important piece of my role as well. So if you want, I can dive deeper into that, but it's a blending of all of it. In terms of like my, background and skill set, I went to school to be a physical therapist. So I
Mm-hmm.
went to undergrad, and then I went back to school for a long time, and I got my doctorate in physical therapy. And then along the way, I, completed certifications for strength and conditioning specialist as well. And then the sports science role was new to me coming into the NBA, but
Mm-hmm.
um, a lot of it you end up understanding because it's like I said, it's a blending of science, medical, and strength and conditioning. So it's just a really great way to objectify your thought process.
Okay, so would you say your role is kind of similar to remember that show Sports Science that used to come on ESPN? Like
Yeah,
I don't remember how many years ago. Is your job kind of similar to that? Not exactly, no, not exactly, but is it similar to that as a point of reference?
man. Yeah. So again, my role is really based on the medical side, right? And so by that I mean, we're doing injury assessments.
Mm-hmm.
Someone really does have an injury, and we're also doing what was called risk assessments. And so we're trying to essentially, as best as we can, it's very difficult, and the research talks about it's you know dang near impossible to do it, but prevent injuries, right? Catch them before
Yeah.
they happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so my role is to use the technology that we have at our practice facility, and to use things that we can take on the road with us and be really creative to figure out ways to objectify how someone is feeling that day, in terms of their readiness, their availability, their pain scales, their force
Mm-hmm.
outputs. And so it's a bunch of different really cool technologies that we have access to in terms of doing that. In addition to that, we have data that we get from the NBA. I don't know if anyone has really ever noticed, but as a fan, if you go into the arenas, there are several different cameras that are above the court. And
Hmm.
these cameras are capturing information as the athletes are moving, and they kind of, you know, you track the athletes by their jerseys, by their numbers, and literally, man, it is insane how much information you can get from this. It'll tell you how many times they stopped. It'll tell you, on the screen when it shows, how far a player shot from, when
Yeah.
Steph Curry pulls up from 30 and you're like, how did they know that that point on the court is like 30 feet away from the basket? That's that little camera system. So it's called
Man.
second spectrum. And
Hmm.
yeah, it'll tell you every time an athlete stops, every time they turn left, they turn right. It'll tell you how many jumps they had. It'll tell you how fast they ran up and down the court, how many transitions they had up and down. Like literally anything and everything you could think of, this system is monitoring. And so, as we create plans, both training and recovery plans for our athletes, we can use these metrics to help us, make solid decisions.
How do you not get overwhelmed all of that? Because that's a lot to get going on. Like,
It's a
how do
lot.
you not get
Yeah.
overwhelmed with that? That's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah, for sure. Ultimately, what we have to do is we have to figure out what are what we call key performance indicators, right?
Hmm.
KPIs. And a lot of people, in different professions have these, right? So
Yeah.
as a basketball trainer, you could say, man, the KPI for, this young developing player is XYZ skill and, stats, could be a great KPI, all these different things could be KPIs, right?
Hmm.
And our KPIs for different players, we'll have them, from a medical standpoint, we'll have them from a strength and conditioning and performance standpoint. We'll have them from, I'm sure our basketball coaches will have them from a skill standpoint.
Hmm.
But in terms of the load sports science metrics we get, we really try to hone in on a few. And I can't speak too deeply into that, but it's just important to know that teams are creating these, key performance indicators. And it could be sprints, it could
Hmm.
be, decelerations, it could be jumps, it could be a number of different things, right? And not only that, but it'll tell you the intensity at which someone is doing that as well. So
Hmm.
you just hone in on a few, man. You don't get too in the weeds because sometimes there is, and we all know this, you know, again, we could talk about load management if you want, but we all know this, that there is just as much as there is a science to the sport, there is an art and a feel and a certain type of control to the game that with a lot of players you can't quantify, and
Hmm.
so you just can't quantify that. That's difficult. And
Yeah.
so it can be overwhelming, but you really just try to hone in on a few, and those KPIs might be different from player to player as well. You don't treat everyone the same.
Yeah. Because when you're dealing with that big of a different gap of player types, like you going
Yeah,
from a 6 foot guard to a 7 foot big to a 6'7" slam wing, it's like you can't treat all the same. You might have a fast switch guy over here, then the guy who's kind of slow and more powerful. He has his
right,
thing, so it's
right.
hard to really, like you said, box them in and say, well, this is the metric or the standard we're gonna have everybody to. It's like, it's not the most efficient way to do it. So I
Exactly.
get where you're coming
Yep.
from.
Exactly. 100%. So
So
so yeah, it's fun though. It's real fun.
yeah, so you brought it up. I don't know if I was gonna get into it or not, but let's go ahead and get into the load management because
Man, why not?
that's been the I mean, I didn't know. I just whatever the conversation went, I was gonna go with it. But you brought it up, so let's go there.
Great. That's
Um
cool.
yeah, load management, man. That's been the hot button thing from every angle.
Mhm.
A lot of fans hate it because the players are missing time and they, want to see the players play, want to see certain matchups, but then they miss a game because of load management. I understand all perspectives of it,
Mhm.
but from your perspective, because you kind of like your role is very important when it comes to the deciding factor of load management. Like you said, you measure all these things that play a role into this player's performance for this game. So,
Mhm.
can you give, I guess you could say, a definition of what the load management actually really means, what it is, and then kind of explain the factors behind determining what the load management is for a player.
Perfect. Let's go back. This can get real complicated, and I'll try and keep you along with me, keep kind of viewers along with me, but it is, first off, it is highly complex. It
Hmm.
is not just physical, but social, and interesting word called ecology, just like how the social and environmental factors play into us as humans, right, and organisms. um, yeah, it's multifactorial. It's difficult to give you a really solid definition about it, but as we break it down and kind of start from the beginning, hopefully we can kind of develop a conversation about it, right? That's ultimately kind of what we're trying to do here. So when you look at load, there are lots of different types of load, right? And we just say this word load to kind of just encompass everything around what's going on with the athlete.
Hmm.
Load could also be used as could be synonymous with stress in some situations, right? And essentially, our bodies are consistently trying to maintain what's called homeostasis. And that could be, very small, minute parts of our body, like individual parts, like let's say a knee or ankle. We're trying to recover and create homeostasis of that particular joint. Or it could be global, like, your whole entire body is smoked from a basketball game or
Hmm.
any sort of physical event. But it does, let's see, again, it doesn't just have to be physical. It could be spiritual, it could be mental, it could be whatever type of stress you're dealing with, right? Okay, so then how do we measure load, right? How do we measure these types of stress? And so
Hmm.
we have both internal, within our body, ways that we can measure it, and external ways that we can measure load, right? So internal are things like our heart rate. I don't know if you've ever heard of HRV. I have a little, well, there it is. I have a little aura ring on, and
Yeah.
some of these things can measure sleep quality and what's called heart rate variability. And these are, and heart rate and, oxygen saturation. And these are just ways that we can say, okay, how is our body, adapting to stress on us, right? That's some ways to do it. External loads could be like how many times, like I was talking about with the second spectrum
Hmm.
cameras, right? It could be actual physical external load that you put on your body, the actual feeling that you get in your knees and in your joints when you're running up and down the court, right? It is both a mechanical type of load and a physiological or cardio type of load, right?
Hmm.
Mechanical is actually the pounding that you feel, and the physiological is actually the breathing, cardiovascular, all of that you feel, right? And we can
Hmm.
measure that stuff, and that's kind of cool because we could say, hey, in order to run this fast, in order to be Steph Curry and run this fast for this long, like you got to have a certain type of elite cardio, right?
Hmm.
And then to be, just an absolute bruiser and a just banger like Sabonis, man, you got to have a certain type of strength about your body, right? And so then we say, all right, well, we can measure these things, and if we can measure them, hopefully we can control them. Hopefully we can say, we know the amount of stress that's put on a system, a body, but ultimately, the thing that matters is, now can we do that over the course of an 82 game season? And again, this is highly complex because there's a lot of
Hmm.
things that go into stress on a human body, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but it's not, in my opinion, it's not any one single event. It's the compound of multiple events back to back to back to back, and inability to properly recover,
Hmm.
right? You could talk to AAU athlete or a high school athlete, or these kids that are going out, they're playing 3 4 games in a weekend, right? And it's not any one game that
Hmm.
is really tough on their body, or it's not any one workout during the summer, but it's when you're doing two a days for 3 4 days straight, and your body is like breaking down on you. You're like, man, this is really like, I can't go, that's tough. So now we're measuring all of these things, right? And we're saying, okay, if we know that this system is really struggling with adapting to the stress and then recovering from it and being able to go again and go just as hard as you went the first time or the second time or the third time or whatever it is, now you kind of start deciding about making decisions about, okay, well, what is it? What is it actually? What is really the answer? What do we need to do in order to allow this particular person, athlete, organism, whatever it is, be able to compete at a high level, right?
Mhm.
Then that's when all these decisions start happening, right? About,
Mhm.
hey, our superstar needs rest. You know, uh, it's interesting, man. And I have come to, as a fan before I was in the NBA, I had my opinions, right? And I had strong
Mhm.
opinions. And now that I'm in the setting, I realize that there are so many other factors that go into these decisions, and it's like, uh, 50 shades of gray, for lack of better words, right? Like, it is really difficult to make these decisions, right?
Mhm.
And it's multiple people involved, right? It's social, right? It's ecological. It's the NBA, having decisions. It's the fans weighing in on decisions. It's Twitter weighing in on decisions. It's the person, the superstar, the athlete weighing in on these decisions, right? And so it's never one thing that you could really say that that matters, but that is really the tipping for all of it. It all plays into it. And so I don't have I don't have all the answers, right? And I'm
Mhm.
still 100% developing in this realm, right? Ultimately, when push comes to shove, um, any you know any individual on the team side is going to, one, do the safest thing for the athlete, right?
Mhm.
Because they're a person and you care about them, right? And so you want to see them be okay. But on the other end, the goal is to win basketball games, and we all know that. And that's what these guys are here for. And you want them to compete. And I want to, in my role, I want to be competitive as well. I want these guys to, go out and be special and do special things. That's why I came, and that's why I'm in this role. And so, yeah, it's a lot. It's hard to make these decisions. But again, when push comes to shove, if someone can't go, or we really feel like it's unsafe, we're going to have those types of conversations, and then we're going to hear other perspectives. We're going to build bridges within our organization, and
Mhm.
we're going to make the best decision. So hopefully that helps, man. I ranted. How long did I go for? I think I went for like 10 straight minutes on that. But yeah, hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight on it. It's again, just summarizing, we are able to measure these types of different stressors and loads on a body, and it's not any one event. It's the compounding of multiple events, back to back to back to back, and really the goal is to try and manage stress so that we're doing our due diligence and we are doing our best job to hopefully uh,
Mhm.
try and prevent something from happening. But we know ultimately, man, we know we can't. It's tough. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah. So when you're looking at the results that come back from
Mhm,
a certain player,
mhm.
and this says he's kind of have a high low, he has a high stress,
Yep.
probably need to sit him down. How do you approach the play with that conversation? Because I remember, who was it? I think it was Gilbert Arenas. He
Uh-huh.
was on his podcast, and he was saying when it first kind of got into the league, he was like, you got a high low, we need to sit you down. He was like sit down, take load for what? Like
Right.
I feel fine. Like and he's like, do you see who I'm playing against? Like that's an easy 30 ball. Like what are you talking
Right.
about?
Right.
I can figure out another way to rest.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead. Start over. My bad.
You good, you good. So he was like, that's the easy 30 ball right here. I can dominate them. I'm not worried about that. So that's not
Yeah.
I can rest on defense. So
Yeah.
a player like that who wants to play, they're a gamer, but you can tell, okay, maybe they need to take a break here. Like, how do you have that conversation with them and figure out how to manage, the situation that's going on?
Yeah. So I'm going to speak in just, big generalities, but I'll kind of let you know some of the thoughts that came to my mind in that situation, right? So again, athletes are competitive, and I'm also, a competitive individual, right? And so um, ultimately, the discussion is, well, let me just say this in generalities, no one after game 20, 25, something like that, I don't think anyone on the roster is like 100%,
Hmm.
you know? Like there are nagging, and truly, if you're a basketball player in the NBA, you have dealt with something at some point, right? And so we are managing as a medical and performance department, we are consistently managing issues, right? And that's cool. That is part of our job. That's why we're here to put that athlete in the best situation possible, right? Now, I can't remember the exact situation, and if all it was truly was, hey man, your load is spiking, and you don't have any active injuries, and you don't really got anything going on, or hey, yeah, you haven't been complaining of pain. That's a in my opinion, it's a crazy conversation to have with an athlete, right? But if you are like, hey, yeah, you sprained your ankle 3 games ago, and you've been playing 40 every night, and your ankle is swollen, and you're telling me you're having 8 out of 10 pain, and you know we got 3 days after this, or 2 days after this game, like, what do you think about sitting this one out? Or hey, yeah, I know it's a 30 ball, like, and I want to support you on that. Like, I love that for you. I want you to do that, right? But you think we're gonna win this one without you? Like, is that possible?
Mm.
So these are, and that is beyond my scope to ask those types of questions, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
ultimately on the athlete, on the coaches, on everyone else, right? But yeah, like there are so many other factors, right, that kind of go into that decision. But plain and simple, man, it is like, I don't think that's why these athletes train so hard, right? That's why they're so
Hmm.
fit. That's why they're at this level. That's why they get paid millions of dollars, is to do this, right? But ultimately, man, I think in my opinion, especially on the medical side, we ultimately have to do what is the safest thing for our players, right? Again,
Hmm.
we care about our guys, and I know they care about themselves as well, right? And so these conversations are are difficult at times, yeah. And
Hmm.
they are the ultimate competitors, and I want that for them as well. Sometimes it can be a simple conversation. Sometimes it can be a lot more complex situation. But what I will say is, what we won't do is be like, hey man, your load's been spiking, instead of playing, 35, how about you play 20? No, that's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. You're never going to be like, yeah, hey, it's just, I mean, I'm sure it probably can happen, but
Hmm.
it just doesn't make sense, right? Like,
Yeah.
because then you gotta once that flip switches for all of these guys. I remember even being an athlete myself. Once that flip switches and you're in that mode, you're not gonna come out for load
Hmm.
management. What are you talking about? Like, no.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's yeah, we definitely have to have more. In my opinion, we definitely have to have more concrete types of things to lean on. But with that said, last comment on load management. And if you have more
Hmm.
questions, I'm more willing to keep talking about it. But
Hmm.
um, it is often the very acute, sudden spikes in training intensity and training volume that could potentially lead to an injury, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you are used to, let's just say, for example, if you're used to playing, you know, 10, 12 minutes a night, and then your starter gets hurt, and then now you're playing 35 a night, man, some's going to start nagging, right? Something is really going to start nagging potentially, especially if you have an active thing already going on that we were trying to manage, or it's a past chronic injury. That is the number one predictor of an injury is the previous injury.
Mm-hmm.
And there is lots of research about these very acute sudden spikes in training volume, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just that, but on the back end, if you go from playing 35 a night to then playing 12 a night, and then very, very suddenly you just go back up to playing 35 a night, oh yeah, you're asking for something. So then another interesting topic on load management is keeping great athletes training, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they are not, so for our young players, our non-rotation players and our rotation players, we have to keep their ceiling very, very high, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
if they go from playing 12 to playing 35, they're just not going to be ready. So
Mm-hmm.
we have to stimulate that. So
Yeah.
our coaches, our player development coaches, our training, meaning our performance staff, our strength coaches, will we work with all those players to keep their ceiling very high so that they're ready in those moments.
So it's not that you're mentally weak. It's just that you don't really understand where your mental toughness is. You don't understand where exactly you're mentally strong at. It's even crazy. You probably don't even really understand what mental toughness actually is. And I don't blame you because usually we just have coaches yelling at us and fussing at us saying, hey, 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 be mentally tough. You're being weak right now. You're being soft right now. But it's not the full scope and it doesn't give you any true understanding of what mental toughness is and how you can get better at it. And so I'm here to help you guys out. Because just imagine I gave you a pill right here in my hand. Just imagine. And within that pill, it gave you just a epiphany where you just brain just blew up and you're just like, oh my goodness, you got so much better understanding. Now your game just grows by 10x and you just a whole different person now. Bro, I got the pill for you right here. Never fear. B's Mental Toughness Playbook ebook is here. You feel me? So in this whole little playbook I got for you, just small little ebook, it breaks down the mental game of understanding what mental toughness is in different areas of what your mental toughness is and how you can actually grow it and get better and enhance it. So, look in the link, look in the description, and to go ahead and purchase it and do yourself a favor by just understanding what mental toughness actually is and also understanding how you can actually grow it and what you need to get better at it. So, just the mental toughness playbook, small little ebook. I'm just trying to tell you, hey, can't say I didn't warn you. So when you look at how, like you said, managing the load is kind of what the name of the game is. So when you're dealing with a player who sits out for load management, how do you make sure that the load managing isn't hurting them rather than helping it? Because like you said, you have a guy playing 35 plus minutes a night, you tell him to sit out. Is he just sitting out and just chilling? Or is he
Right.
sitting out and like what is he doing to still keep that load at that threshold to where when he comes back, he's not a rusty 35 or possibly getting hurt 35 to where the load management is actually beneficial. So like what is that process like?
Yeah, so now we're getting into a lot of my bread and butter, right? So it's strength and conditioning, it is it is rehab, and then it is also a combination of probably appropriate court work for that individual. So I don't know, let's just use the example of an ankle sprain, right? So
Mhm.
we have a swollen ankle, but the athlete is working with that. They're able to kind of still play, but then they get to a point where they're like, man, this is a little much, or man, I kind of tweaked it during the game, or whatever that is. So then we are activating our process. We're doing assessments. They're meeting with doctors. They're meeting with maybe someone like me. They're clinicians on their staff to do whatever type of medical workup is appropriate for that individual at that time. So if that involves imaging, if that involves actual physical assessments of that joint, if that involves some type of stability testing of that joint, strength assessments, all of
Mhm.
those things. But while that is happening, right,
Mhm.
they don't stop training. Never. Yeah, they cannot stop training. In my opinion, they should not. There are still upper body, core. You still have a whole other leg that is super important for, things that you got to do, right?
Yeah.
And then I also think if it's appropriate, that person shouldn't just stop all their skill work on the court, right?
Mhm.
Like what entry point are they coming into you at? So if it's absolute zero, like I can't do anything. Okay, great. Let's pull back from the court and let's reallocate our resources to, medical and performance. But as soon as you are able to, we're gonna get back on the court. You're gonna do, you can do your form shooting. You're gonna go through your free throw process. You're gonna go through, appropriate things for you on the court, right? Some players, really feel like they need that, and other players are cool and they feel like it may not be appropriate for them to come back too quickly to the court, and it's just better to get them to a point where they can get back to the court when they can do certain activities, right? Like, yeah, I'm cool. Like, if I need to be out a couple days away from the court, like I'm fine with that, right? But I don't necessarily need to go back to the court just to work on free throws or form shooting. I prefer in my rehab process to put a ball in the player's hand like as soon as I can, right? I just think it just keeps them mentally stimulated, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're doing just um, quote unquote rehab exercises and the weight room all the time, it can be mentally tough on a player, right? And so you
Mhm.
want to you want to put a ball in the player's hand. That's what they do for a living, and that's special to them. So I want that for them.
So when you have fans and a lot of people speaking on reducing the number of games the NBA plays and all that. Besides from the business money standpoint, forget about that for right now.
Hmm.
Just from a a player performance standpoint and a long time load management, health, and everything, what do you think makes the most sense to where the players can play as close as they can to the maximum game, whether it stays at 82, go down to 65, whatever? What do you think the game plan should be in your perspective and like in your opinion to where players are playing as many games as they can and they're also being healthy? Like what would be, is it less games? Is it more of this? Is it less of that? What would like what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know. And that is educated. I don't know, because truly, in any level, right? If you are playing as like absolutely as hard as you can, and you are competing and you are pushing your body to its absolute limits, right? Um, I don't know if a reduction in number of games would actually get it done. There could still be, a number of injuries, right? Maybe, yeah, maybe the back-to-backs are really tough on players for sure. Like we all know that, right? Maybe the travel stress is, uh, a really big issue. I think it is for sure. Like those are things that we look at, right? Those are, um, things that we're aware of. Every team is aware of travel stress and,
Mhm.
getting a good night's rest, eating appropriately, right? I don't know if that would actually move the needle. That's
Mhm.
very difficult, very, very difficult to say. Um, if we look at other sports and their timelines between games, like hockey plays 82 games, and they have very, very similar type of schedule as us. They have tough travel schedule as well. Um, if we look at even the WNBA, if we were to say, hey, or even the G League, so,
Mhm.
I mean, they're playing less games. Is there any less more or less injuries? I don't actually know the answer to that question, but I know there's still a significant number of injuries, right? And I think yes, the load management is a piece, but I think it's also you're competing. You are pushing your body to its absolute limits. Um,
Hmm.
so that's a really good question. I don't know. But what I will say is that we both are reactive in situations when it's appropriate for, but we are also proactive. Every team is going to be that way as well, right? Proactive and just saying, "Hey, we know that this is an issue for you, and we need to help you recover as best as you can." So
Hmm.
yeah, injuries are a part of the game, man. Injuries are a part of the
Yeah.
game, and I don't know, a lot of these times, a lot of times these situations are a lot more complex than just, you know, oh, the team is asking you to sit out or forcing you to sit out, or oh, the player just doesn't want to hoop, right? It's
Hmm.
so much more complex than that. So um, I don't know.
Yeah, that's just like the number one thing you hear about when you on social media, you watch TV, whatever. They all say reduce the games, but I think there is a truth to it. But at the same time, like you said, there's more to it than that. Like it's travel. Like you said, it's not just low as far as the games. It's the total environment that the players around that
All of it.
impacts load, like you said, stress. So you have to go back. I think the best option to not get the players hurt would be to play um, video games and let everybody just play 2K as themselves to
Exactly.
avoid
Exactly.
injury.
Exactly, man. Yeah. And that's not what these guys do, you know.
Yeah.
They are competitors. So, yeah. It is my role and my job to help guide them as best as I can, as best as I know how, and have the rest of the team collectively help make these really difficult decisions, right? I'm only just
Mhm.
one little cog in the wheel, and there are a lot of other decision makers that weigh in on the process. All I can
Mhm.
do is just, share with them what I think and give, hey, here's my actual, objective information. Here's what the athlete is telling me, and then we go from there.
So I think early in the season, you had Stan Van Gundy make the comment on, players today have all these trainers and coaches on the staff, and back in the day, they didn't have as many, and they were quote unquote healthier, depending on how you want to view that. Back in the day, less injuries, but today is not as much. Do you have thoughts and opinions on that? I know you probably
Yeah,
can't speak on it, you might not, but if you care
yeah,
to
yeah,
share, what are your thoughts on that?
yeah, yeah. Again, it's a difficult conversation, right? Because there's there's so many other factors, but what I will say is that I don't think that the culture in terms of like the level of competitiveness and the willingness of our players to go the extra mile is not there anymore. The
Hmm.
game, the style of game has changed so much,
Yeah.
like it's just so much faster these days. Like the actual way that our game is being played now is just so different. So I
Hmm.
don't know. Like I can't remember who was talking about it, but like, would you rather, you know, run up and down the court and play someone like, the Warriors or the Kings, and you're running for days and starting and stopping, and all this agility and change of direction type movements, and that impact on the game versus like taking a shiv from an elbow from Dennis Rodman or Charles Barkley or whomever, Shaq, like
Hmm.
just absolutely dominant physical players, right? Like
Hmm.
the game is so different now. So I don't actually know. Guys weren't shooting three balls like they are now, right? Like
Exactly.
yeah, it's just different. So um it's tough, but I will say again, it is not the athletes' unwillingness to be competitors and unwillingness to go as far as they can absolutely go, because these guys are. these guys are working, man. These guys are out here. They're competitors. And if you and it's always fun to have these types of conversations, right? Like if you put XYZ player in today's game or XYZ player in previous game, like how would they do?
Mm-hmm.
It's all the environment, man. It's nature, the organism, the player versus nurture, like their environment. Like what are they actually required to do? And who knows? If you put a pit bull in this junkyard versus that junkyard, like are they going to be able to make it work? Yeah, probably. Like I don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a it's cool conversations, but I respectfully disagree, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
I respect just knowing what I know, and I think a lot of times it's you know it's antics, and they're looking for ratings, and they're trying to stir the pot a little bit, right? It's what they do. It's their job. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think what you just said is probably my biggest pet peeve about, people saying today's NBA, today's players are so soft. It's it's so far from the truth, man, because it's
yeah,
just like you said, it's the environment. Because like you said, back in the day, the game was so closed in because it wasn't that much 3-point shooting. You had two 7-footers on the floor, and everything was predicated on getting to the lane first. The point guard had to drive in first and kick it out, or I'm throwing it down low, then it's kicked out. So off the schematics alone, or the scheme of the game plan, what it is today, inside out is the game plan. So it's gonna be more physical off that alone, and everybody's
right,
clumped in.
right,
It's going to be more physical versus
right.
today's game where you can have a 5 out like the Rockets had, where there was no big man. It's just all 3-point shooters and James Harden, doing
Hmm.
his work.
Yep.
So just thinking about that alone, there might not be a 7 foot on the floor, and the 7 foot is probably going to be, no offense to Anthony Davis, but comparing him to Charles Oakley, there's two different body types. So
Hmm.
just the physicality of the game plan, the basketball, scheme alone, is two different worlds. So it's not
Right,
the fact that I'm soft. I'm conforming to what the game plan is today. Not to mention the rules of, if I touch somebody, that's a foul, versus I smack somebody in the face, you get a timeout on the bench, and that's it. Like, I'm conforming
yep,
to the rules and the way the game is played, and with everything that I have around me. It's not the fact that I'm soft. I'm just dealing with the environment that I'm in. That's my
yep.
biggest pet peeve hearing that conversation, man. But
Yeah, yeah,
I can't stand it.
yeah. It's true. It's true. So there's a there's a lot to it, and I do think I will say that our technology has evolved. If we
Hmm.
put our level of technology back then, that's another interesting conversation that we like to play. That some of the players will sometimes ask me, like, man, if they had this technology back then, like load management, it would have been a thing. Like we would have
Oh
been
yeah.
asking all these players, right, to make these decisions. So, yeah,
Hmm.
obviously, because we are learning and we are growing. And again, we talk about even with our senior staff members about how different it used to be. Uh, the onus on the players to actually do in terms of travel and their own injury management. Like we just have much bigger staffs now. We have the ability to actually really really care for our players, and I think that that is
Hmm.
that is great. We got to protect our guys, and that's something that's really important to me, especially on the medical side. Like there's a stigma, and I just want to squash it. That you know um, the medical, some medical staffs XYZ across the league may or may not care, but man, everyone cares. Everyone has. It's just ultimately what it comes down to is there's multifactorial, right? Like we are
Hmm.
competitors just as much as our athletes are competitors, and we want them to be able to thrive, and we want special things for them. And so those load management decisions, the injury decisions, all of that stuff, man, is very difficult, and multifactorial. So a lot of decision makers weigh in on the process.
Mm. Okay. So let's stay down this road with a different lane, and let's zoom
Mhm,
out just a little bit. So
mhm,
looking at it from the youth perspective, and high school and below, a little bit of college too. How can we incorporate load management to an extent to where it makes sense on that level because, like you said, we can't avoid injury, but we can be more sophisticated about the training overall to where load management is in place. So, what can we do as as a skills trainer and performance trainer, as a high school coach, whatever? What can we do to incorporate load management to an extent?
Yeah, yeah. I think I think plain and simple is, what we're doing. A lot of the research that's happening, baseball, I think, is a really solid example, right? I don't know if there is actually anything specifically that I've learned in terms of load management for basketball players. But what I will say is that in baseball, for example, for youth athletes, I'll just start there, right? At youth athletes, is we are counting pitches for youth athletes, right? And I
Mm,
think that's really really great because there are just certain repetitive movements that we know at very, very high volumes and intensities can be very harmful for the maturing skeleton, right? It just can create fractures, tendon injuries, avulsion injuries, that are just going to sideline these young players, right? Now, basketball is such a dynamic, fluid movement type sport. Like, what would you say? Okay, if an athlete is right-handed, you have to count how many times they jump off their left leg. Like,
mhm,
maybe because you see that so often, that these young kids have patellar tendon or Osgood Schlatter's on their knees, right? Osgood is a very very common injury, or um, yeah, injury, just like a skeletal change that is as a result of all the load on young players' knees, right? And you'll know Osgood Schlatter if you got like a big bump on the front of your knee. I don't know if y'all, a lot of people I'm sure are probably pretty familiar. Players end up using the little strap, the little Chopat strap on the kind of the front of their knee, or they'll roll up some pre-wrap and kind of support their patellar tendon to
yeah.
offload that area a little bit. Very, very common in basketball. But what's funny is, you know, some of the strongest players and some of the best jumpers, the absolute best jumpers, are the ones that are actually more prone to patellar tendon injuries and development of Osgood Schlatters. So it's
Mhm,
like in the research, it ends up coming out as like, hey, um, yes, this is very common in this sport, but ankle injuries, Achilles tendon injuries, knee injuries, all these types of low back injuries, all these are very common. We know in basketball, right? But some of the best players, the most dynamic ones, are oftentimes the ones that are getting these injuries. And then we like scratch our head and we're like, well, how? Like, shouldn't he be strong? Shouldn't he be in shape? Shouldn't he be like, and yes, but then it comes back to load management, right? So
mhm,
I don't know the actual right answer, right? But I'm sure if a lot of people put their heads together, we could probably make some solid decisions in terms of young basketball players. Like, do they really, at that young age, do they really need to be playing these AAU tournaments where they're playing 4 games in a weekend?
mhm,
Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's the actual volume. Maybe it's one thing that I've been kind of pondering a lot recently is maybe it's a lack of skill in those young athletes, because I think that
mm,
skill can be a buffer for injuries. And what I mean by that, I know that kind of like sparks some, like you kind of tilt your head back, is
yeah.
if you are very skilled, just think about this. If you are very skilled, you can control the game at a different level. You can control your pace, you can control where you put the ball, you can control your actual movements, you can control the movements that you are going to do. And then, if you have the basketball IQ to then imagine what the defender is going to do, you can control the game, right? So if
Mhm,
you have a little, knee injury, or, a little ankle injury, or whatever it is going on, well, you are just going to modify your movements to say, okay, yeah, hey, I don't want that stress right there. Or, I mean, athletes do this all the time, right? Like, oh, I
mhm,
have this knee injury, I have this thing on my left side. Like, I'm a 2-footed jumper now, right? Like I can't
Yeah.
jump off
Okay.
my left leg anymore, right? You are going to modify the game to still get the job done, to still get the task done, right? So, but the more skill that you have, the more that you can, the greater buffer that you have to be able to do that, right? So,
Mhm.
then these young kids are like, yeah, hey, my left knee hurts, and um, well intentioned, but maybe potentially, um, not as educated coaches and trainers and XYZ are just going to continue drilling that movement, right? Or are going to say, no, hey, we are building toughness and competitiveness, and hey, I want you to do that. And in some cases, yeah, like we have to challenge our young athletes. We have to, allow them to feel those difficult moments, right? Because that we're building resiliency. We're building like competitors, right? But at the
Mhm.
same time, is it the best thing for that athlete to be jumping off their left leg repeatedly, right? Do they need rest? Do they need a little bit of, you know, 2 days on training, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off, to recover appropriately? Do they need stretch routines and therapy and good warm up routines? That's another thing in soccer. I know I'm talking a lot, man. My bad. In soccer, they instituted what's called FIFA 11, and it's basically a combination of a really, really solid warm up that includes functional type movements, plyometrics. So I believe it's just a bunch of like agility type movements and good landing mechanics,
Mhm.
teaching young kids and players how to properly warm up goes a really, really long way in terms of, you know, uh, helping their bodies, right, as they develop. And last thing on this is young basketball players. Hot take, ready? Young basketball player, any player, any young athlete should not play the same sport year round. Should
Mm.
not play the same sport year round. Go out and experience a wide range of skills, right? Go out and play soccer so that you get great footwork, right? But then you're actually using your body in a different way. You're not doing the same repetitive movements over and over and over again. Go out and learn tennis, play some ping pong, go play football, whatever it is, just experience something different and allow your body to diversify its, movement library rather than just doing the same repetitive skills over and over again, because that is really tough on a maturing skeleton, maturing tendons, maturing ligaments, uh, maturing musculature, etc. So, okay,
Yeah.
so let's review that. I just gave you a lot. So it's
Mhm.
pitch counts, right? We talked about pitch counts. We talked
Mhm.
about FIFA 11. We
Mhm.
talked about being mindful of repetitive movements, and we talked about AAU, type tournaments, and just like very acute spikes in training volume. And then just that last one right there, that fifth one was just not playing the same sport year round, right? Going out and experiencing something different to allow your body to to adapt to new skills and movements. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think the skill level one is probably the newest one. Like it makes sense. Like you think about a Chris Paul, his athleticism went down, his speed went down, but
Right,
IQ is amazing. So okay, I can't run around and be as quick as I used to. I'm gonna just outsmart all you guys and still get to my mid range pull ups and my little mid range fade away and hit my
right,
yo yo. All this stuff
right,
to where I can still be effective. But
right,
I never transitioned it down to the youth level where it's like you can be smart too and just say, hey, you don't feel solid on your ankle, adjust your game. I think
right.
players intuitively know that, but they don't cognitively say, okay, my right knee hurts. I can't push off going to my left. So let me cater my game to where I can go to my right, or I can cater the defense going to
Exactly.
my right to where it makes sense. Because I literally just had that issue like a week or two ago playing one on with some guy. I took my knee a little bit. I was like, oh, okay, let me feel what I can do and can't do. He drove to his right, my left. I was like, that feel a little weird. Okay, let me
Mm,
push him this way. Okay, that felt better. I can still play. All right, boom, game plan. I
Boom,
figured it out.
game.
Now I'm playing.
Yep.
So I think
Yeah,
like you
you'll
said,
see
the
this.
skills is different. Yeah.
Right, you'll see this happen all the time, right? Like if you have a shot and you're like, man, like, it really hurts like to, do XYZ movement, I'm probing, I'm crossing over, pick and roll, XYZ, whatever type movements, right? But I can sit in the corner. I can sit in the
Hmm.
corner. I can shoot this three. Like, great. Let's do that, right? So Jimmy, I think, was doing that the other night. He was practicing his three ball in the corner after he tweaked his ankle. He was like, "Man, I could still do this. I'm still gonna get my jumper up." And I was like, "Okay, perfect." So, yeah, 100% skill is I think um, uh, big potential for injury, buffer, injury reduction, injury risk modifier for sure.
Yeah.
Just as much as strength and speed and all of these other things are, being able to use your brain and manipulate, defenders, manipulate offense, just putting other players in really great positions, right? And facilitating the game for the rest of your team. If you could do that, man, that's great.
Hey, relax. It's okay. Listen, I understand that your goal is so big that it just feels daunting. It just feels overwhelming. Like you're trying to get to the NBA, you're trying to get to WNBA. You're trying to play D1 college ball. I understand sometimes that feels like a lot. But listen, you're not gonna make that jump from now tomorrow to be to the league or be in D1. So let's just slow down and focus on the whole journey. Enjoy where you're at right now, but don't get too comfortable. You have to still keep working. You still have to make some type of progress and still keep growing. All you gotta do is think about this. If the minimum I can do today is get 1% better, you winning. Because there are some people gonna take a step backwards. There are some people that's gonna stop and just be equal. But technically, you're not gonna be equal because I'm getting better than you, so it means you fell backwards now. And so you gotta get 1% better. Because it's a slow grind from where you're at now to where you want to get to. You don't have to worry about taking over the world in one day. Just take over step by step, one piece at a time, 1% better. It's a whole journey. Okay, you got this goal that's just hanging over you, weighing you down. But this goal, the end destination, it's not gonna change. So you have to appreciate the journey and taking steps to get there. You're a marathon runner, but the whole marathon is about focusing on that next step. So I need you to go ahead and look at whichever one you want. You can get this one, one of the other ones. But I need you to get this reminder for you. Get you a hoodie, a t-shirt, whichever one, as a reminder that progress is my only goal. And progress don't mean I'm perfect. Progress don't mean I'm there. Progress means I'm getting better. Because better and better adds up to being the best you that you can be. But the best is not existing because you're always going to get better. So get you this peaceful reminder right here to say, hey, all I gotta do is be a little bit better, 1% better, and I'll get to that goal at some point. So remember, it's about the entire journey and not just the end goal. Because progress is the only goal. Okay, so let's combine what you just said. So playing other sports, but then players not having the IQ and the skill level to be able to adjust like that.
Mhm.
So if we're not playing a sport year round, how can we develop the skill level within that sport and still be load managed when we're playing the other sports and everything too? So how can we be playing other sports, but still adapting and growing the basketball skill year round?
For sure. Yep. So yeah, that's a really good question. And we start looking at like some of the really special professional players across a lot of different sports, right? Let's use like Odell. Odell Beckham Jr. is a really good example, right? OBJ is one crazy physical specimen, right? I've had the pleasure and honor of working with him in the past, and one, he is just uh, wicked athlete, right? He's so special. But two, anything that you give that man, he will just be able to master it like immediately. So there's
Mm.
something special just about his skill level across a wide range of different movements, right? So he could kick a soccer ball, he can dribble a soccer ball, he could do that, he could throw a baseball like crazy. He's a crazy track star. He is
Hmm.
super fast. He knows how to move his body really well, right? And so um, yeah, you've seen him do a lot of these things, particularly in football, right? Because
Mhm.
of his wide range, his greater range of ability to combine a lot of these different types of movements, right? So, he knows how to play soccer. So, okay, footwork when it comes to being a receiver, that is pretty difficult. That is a skill in and of itself. And then
Mhm.
timing all of that, coordinating your movements, and saying, okay, I need to stop on a dime here after my fifth step, fourth, seventh step, whatever it is, and then change directions, go that way. That takes footwork. That takes skill, right?
Mhm.
Um, just being a track star, like his off the line acceleration is out of this world. He
Mhm.
creates so much separation, right? So you start talking about people like, liken him to John Moran, right? That first
Mhm.
step, right? Acceleration and distance that he's able to create,
Mhm.
incredibly special there. But then I think what you're also getting at is the basketball IQ and the actual technical skills, right?
Yeah.
And when we talk about that, and we also look at research about that, is learning new skills. Let's talk about that.
Mhm.
So there are a number of different ways that you can actually go about teaching an individual new skills, right? So we talk about block practice versus random practice. I'm not sure if you've ever heard about this. So block practice is essentially just like doing some over and over, so like shooting the same jumper over and over and over and over again, right?
Mhm.
Random practice would be like, okay, shooting your jumper, but from different points on the court, right?
Mhm.
Or practicing your dribble or your crossover, the same thing over and over and over and over again, versus, hey, I'm going to give you 3 or 4 different types of moves, and I want you to practice all of these in kind of a random type of order, right? The
Yeah.
individuals that end up practicing a random type of order, their performance in the session that they're actually in might be lower than the individual that ends up doing block practice, but
Mhm.
over time that individual ends up learning more about their
Yep.
body, and they end up learning more about just the actual movements that they're doing. They end up getting better. They end up performing way better. Another thing is the amount of feedback that you give an individual, right? So you could give feedback continuously, like a helicopter parent. You'd be like, no, hey, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way,
Yeah.
right? Versus, I'm gonna give you feedback every 3 times you mess up. You have a delayed type of, right?
Mhm.
Or, hey, I'm gonna give you feedback every time you ask for it, is a different type of
Mm.
feedback. Then they're actually like thinking about it. Then they're actually saying like, hey, coach, I'm shooting these threes, but like, man, I don't know what I'm doing with my elbow. Can you tell me what I'm doing with my elbow on this next one? Okay, perfect. Great.
Mhm.
Now they're actually thinking about it, and they're going to really integrate it versus the person that just keeps jabbing them. Keep your elbow in. Keep your elbow in. Keep your elbow
Yep.
in, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, the way that you coach and the way that you teach individuals is huge into their skill development. And then last thing is, besides the actual physical skills that you do, just a plain love of the game. I think anyone can always, if you love what you do, or if you take that love away from someone by making it actual work, then man, that's a huge thing. So for these kids that are playing, sports year round, and they end up getting burnt out, or they end up, having this, feeling a type of way about a sport that they love, and they end up kind of distancing themselves from it. It's not fun anymore. You got to
Mhm.
make it, fun. You got to make it interesting. So, any way that you could have that, any way that you could, yeah, hey, you're playing soccer right now, but hey, let's go watch, or hey, yeah, let's go play this 2K, or yeah, hey, let's go watch this game, let's go to this basketball game, whatever it is. And putting them through these types of mental sparring situations are huge for
Mhm.
players as well in their development. So yeah, man, it's tough, but I think ultimately, like, is it going to make or break a 10-year-old, or a 12-year-old, right, to
Yeah.
not play basketball year round, right? I don't think so. By the time you get into high school, then we're like really, yeah, hey, we gotta lock in, right?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of really special players that can say, yeah, hey, even in high school up until whatever junior, senior year, that are like,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm a 2, 3 sport athlete, whatever it is. They're just gifted,
Yeah.
special. So, um, and I love that, and I want that for people, right?
Yeah.
If you can pull it off, if you're that much of a specimen, you could do that. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I think that's interesting because you hear so many parents and players are like, well, I have to train you around because I'm getting better. And the sixth grader from this school is so much better and so much more skilled than my kid or my little girl's behind because they're doing this year round. But it's like you said, it's the long term game because
yeah,
there's so many things you could pick up around. Like going back to this, it's about the environment that you're in. So you can pick up things from soccer, from baseball, from football, from track, from whatever other sport you're playing that you can bring back to your main sport of basketball, since the basketball podcast. And
right,
so I think that's important, man, because you get so stressed out and so overwhelmed that, kind of like you saying again, it's the mental part where it's like you're stressed out about it and you just get so bogged down to it, like, I'm burnt out, I'm done,
yeah,
it's too much on me, man. So I think that's a very important message for players to get because it's 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 important, but it's not everything.
yep,
Like, it's okay. Like, you're
yep.
not playing year round. It's not going to be the do or die factor of your career. But
Right, exactly. And also think about, the little saying, distance makes the heart grow fonder, right? Even
mhm,
a mental distance away from uh away from your sport. Man, when you come back, you're going to be so like, you ever not been around a basketball court for a long time, all of a sudden you come in, you're like, man, I love this. Like I
yep,
need to be here. Like that's part of my part of my happy place, my safe space. Like I love this. And then also just I'm big on, always sticking with really difficult commitments, right? So like there's times in my young athletic career when I wanted to do these other sports, I wanted to play these other things because I was just like, man, like I don't know anything about that. I don't, I didn't play soccer was not my main sport, right?
mhm,
And when I went and I did some of those things, or, I started playing golf in my later years as an adult, I got really excited about them because I want to teach myself and I want to teach other people around me that doing difficult things is a part of life. Right. And
mhm,
so if you integrate those skills and you stick with those commitments, even though it's not your main thing, or maybe it might not be what you're 100% special at, man, think about that. That teaches a
mhm,
kid to do really difficult things. That also
mhm.
creates a competitive type of atmosphere within themselves, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, man.
yeah. So one thing I do want to ask you about, because you kind of are in this field, the mental half of, I kind of just jumped all over the place with this, but it's fine.
That's cool.
But
That's fine. That's
yeah,
fine.
the mental half of recovering and getting back on court.
Hmm.
I think I might be biased because I'm big on the mental game, but I think that's the most underrated part of the recovery process and the rehab process because you'll hear, growing up, I was a big D Rose fan. So you heard the team said they're clear, the doctor said he's clear, but he's not back playing. And after a
Right.
while, you're like, why isn't he back hooping if he's cleared to play? Being a hooper, you understand it's a mental side to where, yeah, you say my knee feels fine, but I don't trust the fact that my knee is fine because I done
Right.
did this layup 3 times and I end up in a surgery room. So how do you, deal with that half of the game? Because that's the biggest gray area. That's kind of a pun, but the biggest gray area of of the game that fans can't see, commentators can't see,
Yeah.
but it's like that's the most important piece. Because if I don't feel good, you're not getting MVP Derrick Rose. You're not getting 30 and 10 every night. So how do you, in your role, how do you manage that, and what are like your thoughts around that?
Yeah, that's great. First and foremost, I think whenever you are working with a player, anyone really for that matter, but especially athletes that are used to using their body and their physical movements to express themselves, right? And it is their identity. To take that away is just crazy, man. That is hard, right? I've been there. I've been there many times. Where I just felt as a young athlete, it was like my junior or senior year. I hurt my knee in high school, and I had to get surgery, and I just felt absolutely like I use a strong term. I just felt useless. Like I just
Mhm.
felt like I could not be who I was. My identity was just gone, right?
Mhm.
And so, one thing is, first off, you have to get to know that individual and you have to create a deep relationship, right? And there is
Mhm.
something truly special about going through difficult times, right? And the people that you're with when you go through those difficult times, you create very enriching type of relationships, right? And that's really what I'm about is relationships across all levels of this world. Our human existence is really what it's about, right? Just sharing good, positive energy with people,
Mhm.
right, is what it's about. And so, one, just giving athletes confidence that, hey, like, this is what I do, and I'm competitive about this shit, right? Like, I get excited. This is my moment to help guide you through this process, right? That's something
Mhm.
that is very important to me, right? I went through that as a young kid, developing, adult, and I learned over many, many, many years, my, mental struggles and my, um, you know, whatever it was, that pushed me to an academic point where I could say, I know how to guide this process. One is just
Mhm.
like building confidence within that athlete that you care about them and that they can trust you both mentally and, that you got their best interests at heart, right? Okay,
Mhm.
so first, you got to create that relationship. Two, you got to figure out uh, other things outside of their life that they can lean on in that moment, right? Like what other things kind of give them joy. And I think that the happier that you can make an individual, and if they have absolutely no other type of coping strategies, that we got to figure that out, right? So
Mhm.
on our team, we have a mental health, therapist, um, and she does that. That is like her jam. Like she works on that mental game and helps athletes work through that coping process, right, while they're injured,
Mhm.
or just while they're dealing with any stress, any sort of mental stress in general.
Yeah.
And that's huge. And I'm so thankful for her that she's able to help us out with that. Um, I still do a lot of it in my rehab because the physical is just as important in the mental, and the physical part of it gives you mental confidence, right?
Mhm.
So okay, so we built a relationship, and we have good positive coping strategies, right, during that tough process.
Yep.
Then I think another very, very big component is what's called graded exposure, right? So over time, throughout the process, you are slowly making these small little steps, right,
Mhm.
towards what the actual goal is. So when you talk about, therapy type, research, there's a lot of different ways to make this happen, but one simple way that I preferably like to follow, it's not the end all be all, but it's just one very simple way because it helps me organize my thoughts and explain it to an athlete, a basketball player, in ways that they really understand. So let me just walk you through it. So
Mhm.
it is, um, if we have a skill that we're trying to get back to, like you said, layups, right?
Mhm.
Well, that is the end goal. But how can we continuously break down that skill, right? So we have uh, part, whole, practice. So we break that whole up into parts.
Mhm.
And what things do we need to do in order to get you there? So if we start all the way at ground one, let's just say we have a knee injury, right? Let's say we have an ACL. Well, first off, we're going to have to get you back, and your knee, um, the actual integrity of your knee is going to need to be solid, right? So we're talking ACL reconstruction. We're talking, months and months and months of rehab to get that knee to feeling better and quiet down, no swelling, like, minimal pain. And then physically, we're going to build you up with good quality movement, right? So we'll go through a
Mhm.
number of things like, let's get you back squatting and lunging and, marching and skipping and jumping and, running and all of these different types of activities, right?
Mhm.
And slowly that looks closer and closer and closer to doing a layup, right?
Mhm.
So now we have all those things. Well, then let's try and make it a little bit more sport specific. So, maybe we'll do some change of direction type of activities or plyometric type of activities. So starting all the way at ground one, we talked about, marching and skipping, right? Well, and jumping. Well, let's change that up a little bit. So let's do some, little pogo hops, using your
Mhm.
ankles. Let's do some jumps on 2 feet, off 2 feet. Let's do some bounds from one leg to the other. Let's do some hops, one leg to the same leg, right? And then slowly it starts looking more and more like that movement. Okay, let's do some, deceleration type movements. And this whole entire time, we are getting closer to that task. But the whole entire time, we're monitoring for things like, ligament issues, pain across that knee. And
Mhm.
ideally, we want that to be quiet, to be, feel it feels good. It's simple. This is very straightforward. Cruz, I know what you're doing when you're saying, yeah, hey, this drill is getting you closer to doing that, right? And I organize it like that, just very, stepwise. It just makes sense. Um, so then we go in and a layup, a simple layup like that, where you know what is happening and you can anticipate that movement. That's probably like in the along the middle part of the rehab continuum, right?
Mhm.
It is a anticipatory type movement, meaning you can anticipate what's going to happen. You are pre-programmed. You know how to do this movement, right? But
Mhm.
you might start really small, like you might be right under the basket, and you might just be like, "Hey, man, just like hit it off the backboard. Just let that thing go in." Right? Okay. Now take a step and do the same thing. Okay, perfect. And now take 2 steps and do the same thing, right?
Mhm.
And even though it may not feel like a full speed, layup, like we are, you know, part whole practice, right? Like we are getting you closer to that. Okay. So now, in my rehab process, essentially what I've, you know, as I got closer and closer to the NBA, and then I started working in the NBA with all of these different types of, sports, I try and make my progressions, right? And we say, okay, if you can jump, if you can bound, if you can hop, if you can run, if you can change directions, well, I have a pretty good idea of what types of movements you can do on the court. But again, it's about building bridges, and I'm going to bring in your player development coach. I'm going to bring in your coach to help us through this process because sometimes it's not 100% valuable, or maybe you just need to hear a different voice other
Mhm.
than me. And that's cool. And I love that. And I want that for you, right? So that you don't just get tired of my voice being the only voice that you hear, right? So that's really important to me. And I try to include other people as soon as I feel like it's appropriate, and as long as they know what things are okay and not okay to do, right?
Mhm.
So then
Yeah.
we're like, all right, uh, you know, we're doing free throws, we're doing spot shots, we're doing form type shooting, right? Then we'll do things like, okay, let's go catch and shoot. Let's go dribble pull up. Let's do a super light, runner or floater. Let's do these types of movements that get you closer and closer to the thing that is what it is, right? Playing, just hooping freely. But then at a certain point, you have exhausted these anticipatory type movements, and you really have to get back to reactive type basketball, right? So,
Mhm.
and there are a number of different drills that I can do without a ball, like a million, right? But that means nothing to you, right? That means nothing to you. And so, again, what we have
Mhm.
to do, we got to put a ball in your hand. We got to make it intentional and interesting for you so that you can actually move freely and not think about your knee. So by that point, we are probably at a point where hopefully, yeah, you're still going to think about your knee, but it's going to hopefully start to be like just less and less and less. And you are actually thinking about the skills that you are doing. And if you're hearing it from a basketball coach as well, oh man, they're going to get your mind off that knee. Probably
Mhm.
working with me, I'm going to keep your thought on your knee just because I'm medical. Like that's just
Yeah,
what
yeah.
that's the context that you think of me as, right?
Mhm.
But when you're working with someone else, if they're working with you, they're like, oh man, B-ball is watching me. Like I got to make sure this looks good. I got to make sure this looks great. So the context is different. You are
Mhm.
working for skill development at that point, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so then we did that. Now we're talking about transition type movements. We're talking about shooting on the move. We're talking about different level of finishing packages. We're talking about defensive type skills and movements, right? Then we're getting into one-on-one type movements where they're working with you and they're going through different types of whatever type of skill development that you want, but there's no defender, and you are telling them, hey, just react to me. Like we're just hooping right now. Like, great, let's
Mhm.
do this pick and pop. Let's do this shoot on the move. However it is that you want to have them move, right? And different angles and cuts and various different things that you feel like is important for their skill development, right? Then we go, okay, oh snap, now it's getting serious. We're doing some contact type drills. So we're going to do one-on-one
Mhm.
script, right? Where you are guarding them and they have to make decisions based on your movement, and they are having to decide like, oh man, okay, he's guarding me this way. I got to move this way. I'm putting a little pressure on my knee, but yeah, like I'm good. Or
Mhm.
oh, he's going to contest at the rim. Okay, I'm good. Like I feel good about that, right? Oh snap, he fouled me hard. Oh, after that first hard foul, and they get up and they're like, "Is my knee cool? Oh man, I'm straight. Like I feel good now, right?" I can't do that. I can't. As a therapist, it's really hard for me to build that confidence in a player, right? It's partly social, it's partly like contextual, right? But
Mhm.
they get confidence by being competitors, right?
Mhm.
And doing those types of competitive types of movements and being in that environment, that hard-nosed environment, right? Like you can't gain confidence by being in the training room all the time, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so then we talked about one-on-one script, then we start moving to larger spaces, and we're doing full half court, as many dribbles as you want. We're doing king of the hill all the way across the court, type things. We're involving other different types of players, so it's not just guards guarding you. Now it's wings and centers and other people, and you're in different spots on the court, and you're just trying to use your skills, like react to whomever is going to be guarding you, right? You could do one on two. I've seen our coaches do really solid situations like that with certain players where they have to, know that they have a guard on them behind them
Mhm.
after, roll, but they got the center down in the lane, like waiting for them, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and you're doing all these different types of drills, and our coaches are really great at that. 2-on-2, 3-on-3 script, 2-on-2, 3-on-3 um, contact live. Like you're going hard, you are competing, right? Then eventually you start getting full court because you don't just want that. Like we talked about early on with the load management, you don't want just that mechanical stimulus all the time. You got to get up and down the court. You're going to get breathing sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So we're on 4, 5-on-5, half court, whatever it is, full court, whatever it is, whatever types of drills. We can manipulate the environment. We can manipulate a lot of different things to help the players get more and more comfortable. But every step along the path is super important ultimately to getting them to what they want to do. And every step along the path, I'm really big. Again, we're talked about just good energy, right? It just reminding them about those small wins. That's huge. Like,
Mhm.
gotta celebrate that, man. And I make a really big deal. And even though they look at me and laugh and they're like, come on, Cruz, like I just did a lunge, a body weight lunge, man. Like that's not that serious. I'm like, bro, do you realize like this is getting you closer to what you want to do and where you want to be? Those really long-term injuries, that is huge in celebrating those moments. But if we're talking about a simple ankle sprain
Mhm.
where this is going to progress quickly over the course of days, that yeah, it may not be as serious, but I try to make an effort to stop players, grab them by the shoulder. Hey man, I'm really proud of you. I know it took 3 days to get this thing done, but I'm proud of you, and I, commend you for just the work that you did. And let's go out, let's show them. And if there's any issues, just let me know and we'll continue to work on that, right? So
Hmm.
even in those moments, those smaller or bigger wins, whatever it ends up being, it's about creating that relationship, sharing good energy, lots of compliments, you know building confidence in the players. All of that, all of that is huge. um, I'm trying to think. I went through like a lot of progression there, but
Hmm.
talked about relationship building. We talked about building confidence. We talked about the part whole practice and eventually getting
Hmm.
back to whole, right? And expressing skills not only in a non basketball situation, just can you do the actual movement, but then basketball type scenarios, anticipatory, and then reacting, and then eventually getting it closer and closer and closer to where it actually looks like the sport.
Yeah, I, I think that was a very comprehensive breakdown of basically how to get from injury to back to court. You didn't get too deep into the actual details of it. That might have to be part two. To come
Yeah,
back and just,
that's
just
cool.
break
Yeah,
down.
that's great.
Yeah, you just break
Yeah,
down
yeah,
how can you
because
recover from knee injury or ankles, whatever. So you can do that.
exactly, man. Because it is super, super, super complex, and every joint is a little bit different. Man, there's like weekend courses, year-long courses on that you could take on just the ankle.
Mhm.
And yeah, it is highly, highly complex, but sometimes it doesn't have to be that. And it could
Mhm.
be, just as simple as, hey, here are the progressions. Each day I'm going to let here's the breakdown of, what we have for that day. Let's get it done. And a lot of players are like, cool, let's get it done. Let's
Mhm.
get to work. So
So yeah, man, that was a very solid answer. Hopefully, somebody got something away from that one because that's very like it's easy to apply. That's very easy to be like, okay, I literally just hurt my knee last night. What can I do to progress to get better from there? Okay, I'm not that bad, so I don't need that level. Okay, let's skip to go to level 3. Okay,
boom,
boom, boom, boom. Just stand third and get to back beyond the court. Be back to being a weekend warrior or whatever level that you're at. So,
boom.
uh, it's a very dope answer, man. But
Awesome, man. Appreciate that. Hey, it's been many, many, many years of failing and scratching my head and banging my head against the wall to, get to this point where I could just off rip, just be able to verbalize that. And again, that's part of, the competitiveness that I have within myself. And anyone, can get to a point in whatever skill it is that they have. It's ultimately just about applying yourself and, putting in the time to figure out what your progressions are and what, you know, just yeah, just figure out and ultimately appreciate the sport, and then say, hey, who can I build bridges with? Because this basketball trainer is now like yourself, you know, just like just as much about basketball as I do about the human body, right? And so I want to lean on you to help me figure out ways to make this fun and interesting for this guy, because ultimately that's what really matters for him, and
yeah.
he is the one that we are here for. He, she,
Mhm.
whomever, is the one that we're here for. So
Yeah, like that's the most important piece of the thing you just said. Like it's about the player at the end of the day. Like
yeah,
making sure that they're good, they're ready, they're prepared, and they're in the best case, scenario and situation to where they're performing and they're giving what they're supposed to give, whether it's the pro level for their organization or lower levels given to the team and to the family, man. But
yeah,
I think it's been a overall it's a really good episode, man. I've enjoyed it.
awesome. Okay, well, perfect, man. Yeah, good. I'm glad. And again, man, I appreciate the work that you do. Is it's great, man. It's high quality stuff. I've been watching all your stuff. It's great to be here, and it's exciting to see, everyone's growth and everyone's potential just continue to take off, man. So I commend you and I thank you for allowing me to be on here.
I appreciate that compliment, man. But I appreciate you being on here, man, because I say this to everybody, but it really means a lot when you're building something on your own, and then some people can be like, "I want my name attached to it. I don't mind being on your platform what you're building." So it definitely means a lot, man. So never
Yeah,
take it
yeah,
lightly. I appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. And ultimately, it comes down to just reaching out and just seeing, what's available and building these like we talked about with the players. It's just as important to build relationships with, really solid people on social media that just share good content and good energy. So yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah. So I almost forgot. Yeah, almost. I'm tripping. I got two questions I want to ask you before we get out of here. I
Okay.
try to ask
Yep.
this to every guest, man. So
Okay. Yep.
number one, I'm big on giving people their flowers. Because you have a lot of haters out here. You have a lot of negativity out here. So I want to give you an opportunity to give someone their flowers. Whether it's someone you feel like it's a little underrated, like this player, this coach, this trainer, whoever, somebody that you see is like, man, they underrated, like they're slept on, but y'all should pay attention to this person over here and see what they're doing. And or you appreciate them, so you want to give them the flowers, man. Who is somebody for you that you see is like, man, I want to give you your flowers, give you your respect to let the world know, the listeners know how great you are. So who's that person for you?
Man, I have to go with my wife. My wife is my everything, bro. Really, I really cannot do what I do at this level without support.
Mm,
And a lot of us, you'll hear about, the other amazing people that we work with, and that is also very, very special and important. But the people that are underrated behind the scenes that support us in order to do what we do, man, that's my wife. That's Christina. So I am eternally thankful for her and our
hmm
situation. That she is just my rock, man, my number one supporter. Just helps me with my confidence, helps me with my availability, helps me with just
hmm
truly just understanding what it is I'm trying to accomplish with my career and my life. And yeah, I just cannot thank her enough for taking care of our house and taking care of our dogs and taking care of just our life, you know,
Yeah.
and then keeping me grounded. So my honey gets the flowers. She gets all the roses in the world.
Hey, I respect that answer and I support it because, like you said, there's a lot of times where the people who are like you're kind of behind the scenes when you look at the scope of the players are front line, the coach is front
Yep.
line, sometimes the GM and ownership is front line, but you're behind the scenes of that. But there's somebody behind the
Right.
scenes of that that deserves more respect, and that's the families around the coaches and training staffs and players, man. So
Right.
um, I definitely respect that. I think that's the first. I think the first time I've gotten the wife. I've gotten mom and dad. I think I've gotten
Yeah.
grandparents.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the wife is the first one. So,
Yeah. It's
I
huge,
like
man.
that answer.
It's huge. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So
Okay. You said
before I
number
get
two. Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead. My bad.
before we get there, I
Yeah.
gotta ask the listeners, so, and the watchers, are they subscribed? I just need to know, are they subscribed to the YouTube channel? They're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever. Just follow along, hit subscribe, whatever it is, whatever the button is. I need you guys to like hit that one because you're here listening to Cruz. Like, why not subscribe and listen to the next trainer, next player, whoever I have on, or just hear me talk because this ain't my episode. This is episode. I'm just here to like to look good, I guess. I don't know, but make sure you
Yeah.
subscribe.
Hit
Subscribe
that
to follow
subscribe
along.
button, man. Hit that
Got
subscribe button, man. Hit that
I
subscribe
got
button.
you got the cosign, so you got to do it, man. It just makes sense.
There you go.
So you can find me on all social media at BeBall Jones. It's BE Ball Jones. But more importantly, follow our guest on Instagram, man. Like he sat here and gave you 90 minutes worth of game, breaking down load management and breaking down how to basically just gave you game on the whole rehab process. He just gave you a simplified uh foundational level of understanding how to rehab. So least you can do is follow him on Instagram and see what more he's gonna give you guys, man. So put the link below in the description, bio, whatever it is, whatever platform you're listening to. But for my last question before we get out of here, man, um, you've been around the game long enough, man, and we've all had a situation where, a coach, sits us down, give us a nice little locker room talk, or, during practice, or a parent comes to us at some point and it's like they give us a little lesson about the game, but you sit back and look at it, it's like, man, I took that lesson and I applied it to my life, and that's just bigger than basketball, it's bigger than sports. Or you've been around the game, you've learned a lot of stuff about the game that you applied to yourself, and through your trials and challenges that you've seen and gone through, you've grown and experienced this new enlightenment moment. So what is that moment for you that you're just like, man, it's about the game, but it means so much more now at this point in my life that I
Yeah.
apply to everything that I do, man. So what's that thing for you?
I would say plain and simple. And, I think I alluded to this quite a bit, but just throughout the language that I've used throughout the podcast episode here. But the answer is it's bigger than you. It's
Mhm.
bigger than you. A lot of the guys, when we bring it in at half court and, we finish every game, or, right before they run out in the tunnel, they say one word on our team. And there's a lot of different things that people could say, but they say the word together, right? And I really love that, because it's not about any one individual. It's about our collective, our work, our collective energy, our collective spirit and passion that really allows us to achieve goals that we want. If you want to go, if if you want to go fast, man, go alone. But if you want to go far, you got to go together. You really got to be together with people. And a lot of that is creating those relationships. You get that from sport. You develop those social relationships. You develop that, that followership, and working with individuals. You learn, that life is just not all about you, and you are one small little piece, and how all of it comes together to achieve greatness. So
Mhm.
that's what it's about, man. I know my role, and I'm very happy with my role. And it's very similar to, the person that I gave flowers to, right? My wife, Christina. Like, if her and I were not together, I would not be able to do what I'm doing at the level that I'm doing it, right?
Mhm.
If I was not a part of this organization, the organization may not be able to do, the players may not be able to do what they do at an extremely high level. So
Mhm.
it's togetherness, man. It's not about me.
Mm. That's a very solid lesson to learn, because we get into this, I guess you could say, a generation or era of where it's about I and me.
Mhm.
So I'm not saying I'm bad on that, but it's something you need a reminder from time to time that it's about the team, it's about the family, it's about the group rather than just about you. So
Yep.
beautiful way to end the episode. Of course, gotta give love to the wife. You gotta earn those little brownie points when you can, man. I'm not,
Yes, sir.
I'm not mad
Yes,
about that,
sir.
man. But anything else you want to give to people before we get out of here?
No, man. Again, just thank you. I hope I hope, we get some good engagement from this. I'm happy to, have conversations. I'm sure at some point I probably said some, crazy that people are going to have opinions on. Not crazy, not bad,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, just might spark some conversation. And, I'm up for that. Yeah, it's a lot that goes on. It's a tough industry. It's a very highly touted league. There's a lot going on all the time. It's very interesting. And yeah, it's entertainment, man. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to yeah, just like this podcast. It's all for knowledge and sharing information and entertainment. So I'm happy to chat with people on offline, whatever it is. So
Yeah. So that's it, man. We're gonna get out of here.
cool.
Y'all go watch the Trailblazers game. Hopefully y'all see them there one time.
Yeah, man.
Um, that's it. Let's get out of here. Thank you
Cool.
guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you guys next week for another dope episode, because I think that's all I do with dope episodes, but I could be biased, but I think it's objective. But it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. That's it.
Cool.
See you.
All right, y'all.